I went into maybe the darkest hole in my life. I finally had found something that I really, really wanted to do, and I couldn't do it where I wanted to do it.
Welcome to the SGV Master Key, a show where you will hear personal stories of triumph over failures and how others successfully navigated the unique landscape that is the San Gabriel Valley. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we have chosen the San Gabriel Valley for our home or businesses or both. We believe it is the people and small businesses that make this community great, and we love to share their stories with you. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at sgvmasterkey.com. Here are the hosts for the show, Russell Mono and Scott Warmoth.
All right, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the SGV Master Key. If you are brand new to the show, welcome. If you are a regular listener, we appreciate very much you tuning in and spending this time with us. So, Scott, we were speaking earlier, and we are here in Pasadena. You live in Pasadena, and one of the most iconic things about Pasadena is the Rose Bowl and Rose Parade, right?
Right. And it's one of the things I just have, for the last 20 plus years, just really loved, being part of all the festivities and the activities around the holiday season. It's such an exciting place to be. And living right here where I do at the very start of the parade, I could go out the night before or early morning and just walk down Orange Grove Boulevard and see all the floats, and then you start to see the bands lining up and the horses come in, and it's all part of just this special history and culture of Pasadena. And our guest today is so deeply involved in all of that, the culture, the history, the traditions of Pasadena and the Rose Parade, and it's just going to be a very interesting discussion today.
Yeah. So that brings us to our guest, Ada Gates. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So we were speaking about the Rose Parade, and you have a connection with that, right?
I do. I am the Horseshoe Inspector for the Rose Parade. I'm in charge of up to 250 horses, that they are properly shod, which they have shoes with traction devices on them so that they don't slip on the pavement. They have 5 miles of pavement to travel.
And the term for what you do would be a farrier?
Yes, farrier, and it comes actually from the Latin ferro, F-E-R-O, ferrous, but the old French changed it to farrier.
Oh, so ferrous for iron.
Yes.
Wow, okay. And how did you get involved in that?
Oh, do you have a couple of weeks?
I just learned of this word maybe a couple months ago, farrier. So,
well, I'm one of 8 children, and I grew up in a huge, happy, bustling family in Locust Valley, Long Island. And I'm one of 8 children, and every child had a different passion. I don't know how my parents survived. I mostly ignored us, which is good. But they loved us unconditionally. And when I was 4 years old, I want a pony. I want a pony. My mother went nuts. Finally, I was 4 years old, and she got me a little Shetland pony, and we were both 36 inches high. And we were inseparable. My father.
So you lived on a farm or something?
No.
How did you?
We
it was
lived in a beautiful house
elsewhere?
in Locust Valley with a couple of acres of mostly woods, and there was an old chicken coop outside, out in one area. And my father, who's an architect, redesigned the barn and took out the chicken coop hen laying places, and made a little stall for a pony. So there I was, inseparable.
I must say, you are the first person I have ever heard of who said, can I have a pony, and actually got a pony.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Well, as my mother couldn't stand listening to me one more minute, so she never had to hear it again.
Well, what about the rest of your siblings? Did they get what they wanted?
Yes. with 8 at the emotional trough, it was really tough who was going to get what. But my parents just loved us, and they were okay, and they were able to provide for us. And I did have one brother who also liked horses, and he trained me to ride. But all my other siblings ended up in finance or museum curators, or they all had wonderful careers.
What was it about horses that you love?
I don't know. I think children self-select what they want. You see some boy tearing apart a radio or his, motorized car or something, and then he goes on to become an engineer. Now, forget that. I mean, I could never do anything like that. But I don't know. When you don't know. It just comes. God gives it to you.
So you grew up with 8 siblings. What was that like?
It was like tumbling around in a dryer. Well, we all love each other. My father was married before and had 3 children, and my mother was married before and had 2 children. Then they married each other and had 3 more. So I'm from the last batch. So even though there were halves, we were just like one. And so as I was coming along, the elder 3 were already out and in boarding schools or college or married. But we were still very, very close.
So you're number 7.
Yes.
Okay.
How did you know that?
Oh, you said the last batch, and you said 3, 2.
Well, I could have been the last one, but I wasn't. I'm the middle child. You're right. You got it, Russell.
Okay. Well, Scott is actually
he had a 1 out of 3 chance.
Good job.
Yeah.
It's a funny joke between Scott because he's a math whiz, I would say. So he's already got the odds in his mind. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. So no, fine.
Okay, so you grew up with 7 siblings, and so what was life for you? Growing up and coming to adulthood and all that.
My parents were chic, elegant, sophisticated, beautifully educated. My father was not only an architect, but he became the creator and designer for Steuben glass, because his friend Arthur Houghton wanted to create an American art form. There was Waterford and Dansk and Lalique and all kinds, but America did not have an art form in crystal. And Arthur Houghton family owned Corning Glass Works in Corning, New York. And he came to my father and said, I want to create this art form. And so father designed Steuben glass, and he was a classicist, so many of those original pieces were based on Greek amphora or Roman shapes of some kind. And so he started Steuben glass in 1933 on the heels of the Depression, and stayed with it until he retired when he was 70-something, I don't remember. So, and he was very, he knew everybody. So he would invite Georgia O'Keeffe to come and design something for American artists in crystal. He would put on these incredible shows, and this was at the Steuben shop in New York City. He also designed the Steuben building, which was the first glass block building in America.
Where is that?
On 57th and 5th. No, excuse me, 56th and 5th on the west side of the street.
Okay, right across from the plaza?
No, go down a block. It's now Harry Winston.
Okay.
And it was sort of opposite, not quite Tiffany's, but...
What was the toy store there?
Schwartz, FAO
yeah,
Schwartz.
FAO
but that was
Schwartz.
up a little further north.
Okay.
Yeah, come down a block.
Okay.
Yeah. So he not only designed the building out of glass block made by Corning Glass Works, but it was the first one in America. So he was very forward.
Your father did that?
My father did that.
So you do come from a very privileged
yes.
type of background, don't you?
I mean, Philip Johnson came for dinner, Greta Garbo came for dinner.
Oh, my goodness.
Father
Really?
was best friends with the designers of Lincoln Center. I mean, it was very, very rarefied. But I thought everybody lived like that. You know.
Wow. And you grew up out in the sort of the suburbs then?
Yes, but many people would come and have house parties or come for the weekend. There would be Saturday night. It was black tie. And Mommy had her favorite piano player, and he would come all the way out from New York City on the train, and he would play, and all we children would be upstairs squealing and looking through the banister of the stairwell. And downstairs were these beautiful women in beautiful long satin dresses, and you could hear them swishing across the marble floor, and all the men were in black tie.
Wow. Was this the 50s or 60s?
Yeah, 50s.
Wow. So not only do you have my favorite city, New York, you've got my favorite era, which is the 50s.
Yes. Yes.
And you're like living this life of privilege at that time. And Philip Johnson and Greta Garbo.
Yeah.
And
well, they came a little bit later because after Long Island and, 40 years in Long Island or whatever, my father said, Evie, I'm getting tired of commuting on the train every day from Glen Cove, Long Island to New York City and then taking 3 subways. So finally, we sold the big house in Long Island. We had 28 rooms. Hello.
Wow.
Servants, nannies, the whole thing. Mommy was born and raised in Brookville, New York, right around the corner. She has a long history. Anyway, so we moved to New York City, and we moved to a Jeffrey Platt building. And when my father was coming on as a new architect, he worked as a draftsman for the Platt brothers in New York, who were very, very famous architects of residential houses all across America. So it's interesting that many, many years later, we live in one of the buildings that the Platt brothers designed, and it was a 2-story, 10-room apartment and, 5 bedrooms and whatever. So we left, I'm sorry, we downsized.
This is enormous in
to
my
New York. And it was at 131 East 66, and all kinds of famous people lived in the building.
Yeah.
And we called it the 131 Club. At dinner parties. So the Long Island dinner parties just continued in New York.
Drop some names, please.
Well, that's when Greta Garbo and Philip Johnson and Max Abramowitz and Wally Harrison, these are all architects, of course. Diana Vreeland.
Oh, wow.
Carmel Snow, who was before Diana Vreeland, who really created Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, lived in Paris.
These are all like,
major.
very, started the magazines, Diana Vreeland.
Exactly.
But in fashion.
Yeah. So, re-rack the tape to Long Island. Carmel Snow lived in, I keep bumping this, I'm sorry. Carmel Snow lived in Long Island, and she brought Diana Vreeland on. And Mommy, every Saturday morning, every morning, my father brought my mother breakfast on a tray in bed. And then he would leave and go to New York. But Saturday mornings, Mommy would have her tray, she'd have her coffee, and for 1 hour on Saturday morning, she and Diana Vreeland would talk nonstop.
Wow.
The two fashion, and my mother was a fashion designer, and she was well known, but not as well known as other. Well, because she had 5 children in a big house.
So our last guest worked with Anderson Cooper, but you probably knew Anderson Cooper's mother.
I knew Gloria Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Vanderbilt. Wow.
As a matter of fact, some of my family
You've
married.
heard Vanderbilt?
Yeah.
Wow.
Some of my ancestors married Vanderbilt, so, it's just all swims around in there.
Wow. This is amazing. We may never get to Pasadena.
Let's forget the horses. Forget Pasadena. Let's just stay in the 50s.
Well, to me, it is so fascinating because all these names are like, the names that I grew up with. And these were the people that made New York what it is,
Yes.
And they were the attraction.
Yeah.
And, probably you would have known in the 40s before you were born, but the whole the Algonquin,
Oh, of course. Dorothy Parker and
right,
Wolcott.
Benchley, and
yeah. Oh, yeah.
This was the famous Algonquin Hotel.
Yes.
The what was it called? The night the round table.
Something round, yeah.
Yeah, the round table. All these artisans and artists and writers would meet at this hotel right there on 44th Street and just regularly meet and talk. I mean, these were like the sort of the literati of America at that time.
Well, Father knew all them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, Robert Benchley and just Dorothy Parker.
Yes, of course. I could tell you some dirty jokes, but I won't.
Oh, wow. Dorothy Parker could tell some dirty jokes.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
I have a couple of Dorothy Parkers, but they'd be...
How about like trying to think of... well, I worked at the New York Post in the 70s.
Great.
In the late 70s,
Yep.
which was just at the very end of like the great writers that the New York Post had.
Yeah.
You know, and then it started getting a little bit different with Murdoch.
Oh, yes.
But the New York Post, the oldest newspaper in the country, founded by Alexander Hamilton.
That's right.
Yeah. And it had the great writers in the 60s, the reporters and writers, and so I had a little touch of some of those great writers just at the very end before the Post became what it later became. But wow, that's just fascinating to me personally. It's the personal history is very fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can see in your face that you're blown away by all of this.
Oh yeah, I mean, this was New York. This was like these were the people, the American sort of leaders of society and culture.
Oh.
Yeah, incredible.
So
and now you became a farrier.
Well, it took a few steps.
It didn't happen overnight. Okay.
Yeah.
Dorothy Parker didn't teach you how to. Okay.
So what happens next in your life?
Well, I don't want this to be a geography lesson, but, you're chugging along. There at my feet was this palette in New York of fashion, arts, theater, dance, Balanchine, Jose Limon, so many dancers. Alvin Ailey, of course, came on a little bit later. And so I became a dancer, a singer, an actress, and I did modeling to make money because nobody got hired to do anything. So I had this kind of heady, sort of New York-y life. And, Candace Bergen was a friend of mine, but she got all the roles and I didn't get anything, or I might be her understudy, or, I acted with James Earl Jones and Al Pacino and Bernadette Peters, but they all went on to become major actors. And I think, to be honest and to confess, I wanted applause and approval and to be rich and famous, but I didn't have the drive to be the actor. I wanted the side result, but I didn't have the drive that created it. I thought I did, but I didn't. In looking back, if you're honest with yourself, it had a kind of people-pleasing...
Well, were you too privileged?
No.
It's not because of that?
No, not at all. My parents were not hoi polloi. They loved the arts, had many, many artists as friends. We were not snooty, blue blood, Long Island. We were wasps, but this thing is falling off. Anyway, but no, I don't think we were snooty at all. Not in the least. I had friends that were, but we were not. And so I just think I just batted my head against the wall, face against the glass for years. And I had some successes. But really not enough. And I was always broke and starving, and Father would give me, $100 a month. And I guess in the 60s, that is almost enough to pay the rent, but even so. So a girlfriend said, Ada, I want to go out west. I want to go out west. Let's go get a car and go out west. So I said, well, I've never been west of Hoboken. I don't know what's out there. I mean, if I left New York, I went to Europe. So we drove out west. Car broke down in Colorado, stuck in Colorado. She said, well, I'm going to go back to New York. I said, I think this is fabulous out here. I think this is beautiful. The Rocky Mountains, Vail, Colorado. Of course, the first thing I did was get a horse. I hadn't had a horse in years. I'd been to college and had that New York life, but no horses. So, I should add that after the 36-inch high pony Rosie, I had horses until I was like in my 20s. Fox hunted, rode in horse shows. I was just on a horse all the time. So I got another horse. Could not find a horseshoer. Now here we are in western Colorado in Vail, which is July, August, and winter. Not a lot of horses there. No horseshoers. First guy shows up, he's so drunk he can't get out of the truck. It's just some cowboy. I said, you're not shoeing my horse. Finally find a guy who's good. And he said, Ada, I'll show your horse today, but I'm leaving. I can't make a living here. I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because I'd had good blacksmiths all my life, Long Island. So God answers prayers even when you don't know you're praying. And I open Western Horseman magazine one day, and I see an article with pictures and text about a horseshoeing school in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I said, well, for goodness sakes, I'm just going to go to that horseshoeing school, and I'm going to learn how to do this so I don't have this problem anymore. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. I go to the school. There's me and 49 guys. And the teacher takes one look at me and says, I don't want no woman in my school. And I said, well, that's a double negative, so that means you want me. He didn't get that at all anyway. He did everything he could to make me quit. He gave me the worst tough horses that kicked me out of the corrals. He made me do all my shoes over again. Every week we would make shoes and we'd throw them out on the ground. And
when you say make shoes, that means blacksmithing, no?
Yeah, blacksmithing. We get a straight piece of steel and turn it in the fire, punch nail holes, make the heels, the whole thing. It was very, very hard for me. And we would throw our shoes out on the ground. Oh, that's good, that's good. Get to that's nothing, that's terrible, that's disgusting. He threw away all my shoes. He would throw away a week of work. So some of the guys would go pick up the shoes that he'd thrown away, and then they'd put them in next week as theirs, and they passed. Hello. It was my first little inkling of discrimination.
Sure.
I had never experienced that before. I was just a nice girl from New York. What did I know? Let's push the tape forward. I go back to Colorado, but I don't go to Vail because there's no horses. I go to Montrose, Colorado, which I had been through once on a little car trip with a girlfriend, not that girl that I went west with. And it was beautiful, these ranches and these beautiful plateaus that stretched out to Utah and the Uncompahgre Mountains, and Telluride was just on the other side, which later became a very famous ski resort. But when I was there, it was like a little ghost town. And I went there. And I went to the vet clinic. I got out of school and I drove. I had a horse, a dog, a rabbit, drove my equipment to Montrose, and there was a blizzard. And it was late. It was early December. And it was like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I drive into town and I go to that vet clinic because I had seen it. The lights were still on. And I said, hi, I have a horse in my truck. Can I put him in your barns for the night? Sure. Did that. Next day I go back and I said, I just got out of horseshoeing school and I know how to hot shoe a horse and I've been trained. Do you think I could put my business card on your counter and maybe somebody would need me? Fine, sure. No problem. So I started getting phone calls. Hi, would you come and do my daughter's pony? Sure. So that's how I started.
Wow.
Doing horses in western Colorado.
Wow. I want to go back to while you're in the school.
Yeah.
Where did you develop that drive to continue on in the face of someone doing that to you?
That's where the drive business comes in. I didn't have it as an actor. And I don't know why I had it as a horseshoer. But by then, don't forget, I was a dancer for many, many years. So I had all those muscles. I loved the physical life. I loved being outside. I loved horses. And when I was in Vail trying to get jobs, let's say on a ranch, I got completely, get out of here. Well, you can cook. I want to fix fence. No. I just got rejected everywhere for being outside working. I didn't want to be in the kitchen. So this was beginning to answer all the kinds of things that I loved. And I can't formulate it because I didn't think it. It was just there. And so I spent, 5, 6, 7 years in Colorado. And I did well for the area. It wasn't a big business, but, I was making like $6,000 a year because in the winter there was no work. So I taught dance in the high schools. And I got the basketball boys to come on, get in my dance class. I'll teach you how to jump. So I got the boys. Anyway, so I loved Colorado. It was just maybe the happiest time of my life because I wasn't getting rejected by some director or producer. People called me up. I was making money. I never had made money before. So it just kept going. And then I came to a place where I said, you know what? I really, really want to do this. But I got to be better than this. I got to be better than a backyard in western Colorado. I want to go to the top. I want to go to Belmont. I want to shoe horses at Madison Square Garden. I want to go home and be in the East with my family. I was homesick. I go back east. Of course, I know every horseman. I know the huntsman. I know the heads of horse shows. I know people that are Olympic show riders. And I go to their barns and I say, can I meet your horseshoer and ask if I can go on as his apprentice? So the horseshoer would come in, and in front of the owners who were paying them, who were their patrons, they would say to me in front of them, what? Are you kidding? I don't want no woman in my truck. I don't want a girl in my truck. Get out of here, girlie. I was shocked. I go to Belmont Racetrack. Now, my grandfather, in the 40s, was one of the 3 directors of racing in New York in the 40s and gave people jobs that I later knew and met later. I go to Belmont. They don't care. Of course, I don't tell them that. And the horseshoers at Belmont said, you want to shoe horses at Belmont? You'll never get a test. And if you get a test, you'll never pass. Now, that was the 70s. They couldn't say that today. Somebody'd be all over them like a cheap suit. But they said it then. I came home to Colorado sobbing. I went into maybe the darkest hole in my life. I finally had found something that I really, really wanted to do, and I couldn't do it where I wanted to do it. Here come the answered unspoken prayers again. A girlfriend in San Marino, Wendy Crowley, my best girlfriend, went to Hewitt's school for girls in New York with her, knew her all my life. She calls me up, she says, hi, Ada, why don't you come to California? What? She lived here in Pasadena, San Marino. What? California? California's a nice place to live if you're in Orange. California. But I didn't have a choice. You make decisions and then you realize you don't have a choice because you've gone XYZ. You can't go back. So I come to California and I went to Santa Anita, met a couple of horseshoers, terrified, absolutely terrified, because this was the big time. I didn't feel I was good enough. I didn't know anything. So I go to Hollywood Park, and I see a man, and I know who he is. His name is Harry Patton. And he was the head of the union, very, very famous. I knew about him way before I went to California. He was known all over the United States. And I I had to apply to him to take my test, because you have to take with this exam, because every state has an exam because it's a betting situation. You have to be like a licensed person. So I go up to Harry Patton. Hi, Harry. My name's Ada. Would you teach me what I need to know to take the test? And I kind of like squinched, waiting to hear, get out of here, girlie. And he said, sure. What? You said yes? Great. So Harry trained me. Now, Harry trained a lot of people. And he never asked for anything. He just trained them. But he'd never trained a girl before. That he didn't care. So I met him in the blacksmith shop, and he taught me what I needed to know. And one day we're in the blacksmith shop. I think I'd met him about 3 times. And he's mashing me over the anvil. Do you know what that means, mashing? You kids don't know anything. You're so young. Mashing is when a guy kind of like comes on to a girl.
Okay.
Like kind of like pushes over, kind of pushes on them, over them. Anyway, so he's mashing me over the top of the anvil, and he says to me, I think we should get married. I said, well, I'd have to think about that, Harry. Now, you have to understand something. I had up until then 672 boyfriends. And when I saw Harry Patton at Hollywood Park, I said, oh my God, I could marry him. I already knew I wanted to marry him. It was just instant. I didn't tell him. So 3 times later, he asked me to marry him. And I said, oh, God, I got to think about it, Harry. I'm terrified. I was always terrified. My life was nothing but fear. I was good enough. So Harry trained me to be a thoroughbred racehorse shoer, because every activity that a horse does has their own issues or needs that they have to have in their feet and in their shoeing. And he trained me to be a thoroughbred racehorse shoer. And I can go into details, but I won't bore you with all that. But anyway, and because of Harry Patton, people hired me because I could do better than anybody else a particular thing. Well, horses hit when they run, and it's very hard to make them not hit because they're whatever. So he taught me how to fix hitting horses. It's very difficult. It's no margin for error.
What do you mean hitting horses?
Well, when the front feet go back, they go between the hind legs like a rabbit. So the front goes between, and the hind go wide. That's their stride. So sometimes the front feet will hit one of the legs in the back. And you know what the horse does when that happens? They stop running because it hurts. They come back with legs that look like hamburger meat. Well, not quite, but, they're hitting. So because he taught me how to watch a horse move and how to, just with a minuscule thing, change that gait or change where the toe grab is on the shoe. I mean, we're talking millimeters, because that's all you need to do to have the miss.
So this is a very precise activity.
Very.
The skill.
Yeah, the skill. The skill is huge.
So you've got to, does every horse wear horseshoes?
No, some horses just go barefoot because they're in soft going.
Okay.
But if they're performing, jumping, dressage, carriage horses, they're all wearing shoes.
And are these shoes permanent?
No, they're changed every 30 days. Imelda Marcos, move over.
Really? Okay, so high performance horses,
yes.
Racing horses, and the show horses, they've got to every 30 days.
Well, race
or
horses
even more
every 30.
often.
No, race horses are every 30 days because they don't want any growth of toe. The horse's hoof is growing like your fingernail grows, so they want to keep that as short as possible because they're breaking over and going on to the next stride. A jumper can carry more foot. He's not performing for speed so much as he's performing for height or length of stride over a big fence. They can go longer, 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
I imagine that the blacksmithing is difficult physically, but it sounds like the incremental adjustments that you're making is really the tough part in this job.
The tough part in this job is being under the horse and holding the leg up between your knees and trimming the foot. It's back-breaking work. Back-breaking work.
How long does it take you to shoe a horse?
A racehorse, an hour.
And that horse has to behave for an hour.
Yes.
And you have to behave for an hour.
That's not usually the case.
But how dangerous is it? It looks scary to me.
It's very dangerous because...
And what is the danger? What are you...
The danger is being kicked.
Right,
being
that's
kicked
what I
in the
would
head.
think, yeah.
Horses are a prey animal. They run away from predators so they can survive and not get eaten. So their feet are very, very important to them because that's their survival. So, here we are 5,000 years later, the DNA in the horse is still the same. His feet are still very, very important to him, and he's very sensitive about them. So to have one foot up and being vulnerable and not able to run away, that's all part of training where the horse allows that to happen.
Well, so you have to also build trust with the horse right away?
That's not... I'm not a horse trainer. It's not the job of a farrier to train the horse, but you do have a communication with them. And it's the more relaxed you are, the more relaxed they are.
Oh no, I wouldn't describe you as relaxed.
Yeah, but when I'm working, that's different.
Before I forget, I have to point out, I really love how, when she used the term that I didn't understand, most older people would say like, oh, I'm older or something, and not her. She's like, well, you don't know anything.
Well, at least for me, she was right.
Wow. What a I appreciate how you set the backdrop of that story, and that was all really important about your experience of being rejected in such a painful way, and something that you were very passionate about. Yeah. So we ask each guest to bring an item, and I know that the item that you brought sort of ties into this story. So we can have the picture, but it is a picture of you and Harry.
That's
and
right.
Why don't you describe this picture? Because we'll have this on the video portion.
Okay. The picture shows me hugging Harry. Oh, I married him. It took a while, but
How long after the
Well, Harry
third
asked me
meeting?
to marry him that day, and he continued to ask me to marry him like every other day for 11 years.
Oh.
And finally he gave up, but he still hung in. And, here's the thing. I was a debutante from New York, and I was terrified of what my mother would think if I married a common blacksmith. And I really was afraid of her disapproval, even as a grown woman. I was 45 when I married Harry Patton. Hello? You'd think I'd be over that by then? No. I know if it's not one thing, it's your mother. So, of course, my family and friends adored Harry Patton. They loved him. My mother, no, not so much, but eventually she came around. So, George Regas married us at All Saints Church, and he announced to the congregation, he says, I've counseled a lot of people prior to their getting married, but none of them is for as long as Ada. Anyway.
So it was 11 years from the initial mashing.
Yes, and then we were married, and then we were together for 23 years, and then he died of cancer in 2000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been tough.
Awful.
Wow. I'm not sure if you want to get into that, but I would imagine that Harry opening this door for you was life-changing, really.
Yeah, that's why I gave you that picture.
When was that photo taken?
1990.
So you were married at that time?
Yes, we married in the mid-'80s.
So before we go on to what happens next, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
The legal process can be intimidating. You don't know where to start and you're unsure of what to expect. The attorneys and staff at the law offices of Scott Wormuth have been serving the San Gabriel Valley for over 35 years, helping people just like you navigate through the legal process and ensuring you're treated fairly. You can find them at law888.com or call 626-282-6868. That's 626-282-6868.
All right. Welcome back. We're still here with Ada Gates, and she was sharing with us about her marriage and then passing of Harry. And if you wanted to get into that, we can, but please share with us what happened after you're able to break into this field.
Well, as I started to say, if it hadn't been for Harry Patton, I'd be pumping gas somewhere. He changed my life. He transformed my life. He made me a skilled craftsman, and it enabled me to have a career beyond my wildest dreams. I shod some of the most famous racehorses that ever set foot on a racetrack. They broke world records. They broke track records. They were Eclipse Award winners. And, I made money doing what I loved. But I loved it first, and then the money just followed.
It has to be that way.
It always has to be that way. That's why I didn't make it as an actress, because I wanted the money, the fame, the approval, and.
But your passion was what you did.
Yeah.
So you were you stationed at Santa Anita in Hollywood Park, or how did this
Well, I lived in
work?
Pasadena, and I worked at Santa Anita, Hollywood Park, and then in the summer we would move to Del Mar and get a house on the beach. And spend the whole summer in Del Mar. You start work at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're done by noon, you go to the beach.
Oh, really? Once the races start, you're gone?
Not necessarily, it's just whatever. You can be working if there's racing actually happening. Yeah. You're in the barns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're in the back.
Yeah.
You're in the, what do they call it?
Backstretch.
The backstretch, right.
Can you share some of the horses that you shod?
I shod Miesque, who was a very famous French mare. I shod Wild Again, who won the first Breeders' Cup Classic in 1984 at Hollywood Park. And that year, my horses won the first race, the Juvenile, and the last race, the Classic. And my horses won $4 million that day. And no horseshoer had ever shod horses that won that much money in one day.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah.
I got nothing for it. They hate horseshoers.
Oh, no.
It's okay.
There's no tips. No
Oh,
tips.
really? You don't share in the...
Oh, gosh, no. No. They hate horseshoers. They think we charge too much money. And we're just a necessary evil.
Because you're not assigned to a particular barn. You're
That's right,
actually,
yeah.
you do it for whatever horse.
That's right. You're an independent contractor.
Right.
I guess there's not a lot either, so they can't, shop around for a discount, right?
No. You set a price that you work at, and other people have different prices, so.
I'm sure I have bet on some horses that she has
I'm
shod
sure.
and made money. Thank you.
I hope so.
Because of the good footwork.
Thank you.
So I'm interested in the process of shoeing the horse and the danger and the fear, at least that I would. Did you feel fear when you were, did you ever actually have anything happen that was?
Of course. There's not a horseshoer that hasn't been hurt.
You've been kicked?
Oh, absolutely. Kicked, knocked out.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Look how tough she is.
Yeah.
Well, that's because of my upbringing.
Eight kids.
Yeah, it's fight your way to the top there.
Oh,
you know.
okay. I was going to make a joke there about
Okay.
living in a 28-room home and getting a pony, but I understand. I understand the siblings though.
I think the fear was never from the horses, because the horses are so honest. It's just, do the owners like me? Do the other horseshoers like me? Am I going to succeed? Is a trainer going to hire me? Am I going to get fired? You know, the fears came from internal fears, not hardly ever from a horse. Because a horse will telegraph when he's going to get you.
Really?
You'll feel this tension.
You have time to break away?
You better go fast, because they're fast.
Oh,
Remember,
yeah.
it's their survival. So you can imagine how fast they kick.
But you can't exhibit any fear, can you? I mean,
No, if
would
your
that be-
adrenaline is up, their adrenaline is up.
Yeah, right.
They just,
Right.
well, that's how they survive. They sense everything, like all animals.
So I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I want to go into your experience early on with the discrimination, and then now that you're experienced and trained and have this qualifier behind you. Did that go away, or did it continue?
No, it did not continue. The great thing about the horseshoers in California versus the horseshoers on the East Coast, it's a completely different culture. And although I was born and raised in the East, love the East, my whole backdrop is there, there's a culture there that has doors that are closed. And I came to California, and I wouldn't say the horseshoers embraced me, but they didn't shut me out. They didn't yell at me. They didn't say, get out of here, girly. They allowed me to work next to them. And I had the honor of working with a brotherhood, and we're all in the union. We're in the Teamsters. We're in the second oldest union in the United States. First came the wagon makers or the bakers, and then came the wheel makers. Anyway, the men I worked with were the top men. And you know what? They're not afraid, because they have their own authority and confidence as one, men, and two, in their craft, that things don't threaten them. So I was not a threat to them. And they gave me horses to shoe, horses they didn't want, like the pony. Well, the pony is the horse that takes the race horse to the starting gate. He's a full-sized horse, but you call him a pony because he ponies the racehorse. So they'd say, Ada, go on up to, Tommy Elliot's barn and, shoot that pony. I said, sure. It was work. So they were very good to me. They were very kind to me. And I respected them, and they respected me.
And how many other female farriers have you come across in your career?
There's a lot of women now. Not at the racetrack, not licensed to shoe racehorses. I may still be the only one, I think, after 35 years. But there's a lot of really good women horseshoers that are doing dressage horses, draft horses, Olympic jumpers, hunter jumpers, carriage horses, very, very top level farriers. And we have, it's like busman's holiday. We go to these conventions and we have horseshoeing competitions. Like we didn't have enough to do during our day. Then we go and we compete and do more of it. And the women are beating the men all the time, beating the men.
What does the competition consist of?
Well, you could have a horseshoeing competition, which means you have to make 4 shoes or 2 shoes and shoot 2 feet. Or you could just have a blacksmithing competition where you have to make 2 draft shoes, or a French roadster and feather and cork something else. I don't know.
For time.
Yes.
And at some point in a farrier's career, do they hire someone to do the blacksmithing and then they do the shotting themselves, or is it always you doing from start to finish?
Most of the time, you do the job full time, start to finish. However, a lot of blacksmiths, as horseshoers, as they get older, their backs hurt. So they'll do the blacksmithing by standing up in front of the forge and the anvil, and then they'll hand the finished shoe over to what they call a floor man, who they have trained.
Wow. Wow. Fascinating.
When did you start getting associated with the Rose Parade?
Good question. I don't remember. I think it was like over 30 years ago. I can't remember. The funny thing was, I was working for this lovely lady, and she had Shetland ponies in her backyard in La Cañada, and she gave pony lessons to children. Pony lessons. So I'd be up there in La Cañada, and I'd be sitting on the ground with my legs under the pony because they're so little you can't get under them. So I'd be sitting on the ground with the little foot on my lap, just, doing the manicure, so to speak, rasping, shortening the foot. And the lady said to me, she said, I'm the equine chair of the Rose Parade, and we're having a lot of issues with safety and wellness and welfare of the horse and rider. Horses are slipping, some of them are falling down, and we would like somebody to oversee the horseshoeing and what people need to do. We tell them what to do, but they don't do it because they don't understand or whatever. Anyway, so I came on as the Horseshoe Inspector, and I wrote the specifications. Well, you can use this, and this, and then you tell the horseshoer doing that they need to do this, and this to be prepared, and you should do it X amount of time out before the parade and the whole thing. Then the parade would come, and I would go through all the groups, and I would check all the horses to make sure that they were properly done.
Every horse?
Eventually, yes, but in the beginning, no. I would just spot check the groups because I would be at 4 o'clock in the dark down under the bridge there in the staging area. They call it the pit. And you can't check 250 horses at 4 o'clock in the morning in the pitch dark. So they didn't know which horse I was going to check, so they had to make sure that everyone was correct.
Oh, I see.
250 horses in a typical parade?
It has been.
And unfortunately, this is last year was the first time in the parade's history, right? That we hadn't have it.
I guess so. I don't know. They did do a wonderful 2-hour television special. And I was honored to be asked to be on it to talk about the horses and the shoeing.
Wow. And so are you still involved with Santa Anita?
Not so much. Harry got sick with cancer, and I was his 24-hour caregiver for 3 years. Oh, of course, we had nurses and all that stuff, and he did very well. He was up and moving, and he's a machinist and kept going. But I couldn't shoe horses anymore. I wasn't going to leave him.
Well, 24 hours for 3 years, that's really tough.
That was tough. That was horrible.
Yeah, I imagine.
And it was worse when he died.
Wow.
Because then it's all over.
Wow. And then how did you manage that?
Well, Harry had started a blacksmith shop, a Horseshoeing Supplies store in Monrovia. And, of course, he left that to me. I didn't want the store. I didn't want to count inventory and write invoices. And math. I'm not very good at math.
Okay.
Failed every math class I ever took. But I kept the store running, still have it. And it's,
What's the name of it?
Harry Patton Horseshoeing Supplies.
Oh, wow.
Where is that?
In Monrovia on Maple Avenue. It's just one block. It's just right off of Myrtle and Huntington, near Myrtle and Huntington in Monrovia.
Oh, it must
Near
be
Old Town
off
there.
of Myrtle then, because
It's off of Myrtle. It's 1 block north of Huntington between Magnolia and Primrose, which is
oh, okay. I think I know the area.
2 blocks west of Myrtle. Yeah.
Okay. I think I know where the area. Yes. Okay.
Can I just tell you one more thing?
Yes, absolutely.
When I was shoeing for almost 8 years, I went home for Christmas, and I went to see my cousin Townie Burden. Townsend Burden. He was my mother's first cousin. We always had Christmases together. Huge. They had a huge family. So Townie gave me a Christmas present, and inside it said, "It's all come full circle. Your great-great-grandfather was a blacksmith too." I said, "Townie, what are you talking about?" Oh, excuse me, Cousin Townie. Always, if you're a WASP, you always say Cousin Townie or Cousin Alice or Aunt this. never call somebody by their first name. Anyway, so I said, Cousin Townie, what is this? Well, Henry Burden. Henry Burden. I thought, who's Henry Burden? Well, Troy, New York. Just go look it up. So I discovered that Henry Burden was a Scottish immigrant, and he came to this country in the early 1800s. He had an engineering degree from the university in Edinburgh. He was a famous inventor of a plow and got first prize in Syracuse, New York, in some plow contest. Some iron people noticed him, had him come to work for them, and he started inventing machines, 1820, 1830, in Troy, New York, which is across the Hudson River from Albany. And the great thing about that area was you had water, you had falling water from high cliffs, so you had energy from falling water. And Henry Burden invented the first machine to make railroad spikes. The railroads were expanding. There were not enough men to hand make every single railroad spike that you needed for the Long Island Railroad, the Ohio Railroad, the trains going west. Henry Huntington was running trains west. So he invented a machine that would make thousands of railroad spikes like a day. He invented a machine called the steel puddling machine, which took iron ore and extruded it into one long round bar, rebar, which enabled you to build a building higher than 3 stories high. Hello, skyscrapers. Up until then, wood would fall apart at 3 stories.
Your great grandfather invented rebar?
Great
Great-great-grandfather.
Yeah, on my mother's side. Then, do you know what he did? He invented the first machine in the world to make horseshoes. 1835.
That is full circle.
I had no idea. The first machine in the world to make horseshoes. So he was making 60 horseshoes a minute. You couldn't have 10 blacksmiths make 60 horseshoes a minute. So then comes the Civil War. In 1862, he was making $1 million from the railroad spike, the steel puddling machine, and the horseshoe machine. In 1863, he got the only no-bid contract for the Civil War for the Union Army to provide horseshoes for the Union Army.
Oh, wow.
So the Union Army would go down the trail with Burden horseshoes in their knapsacks. Horse lost a shoe, boom, jump off, put the shoe on, keep going. The other side, lost a shoe. We got to pull the house out. We got to go to the blacksmith shop. He's got to hand make the shoe. By the time that was all done, the whole regiment had left. They say that when the Confederates captured a Union group, they stole 2 things: ammunition and Burden horseshoes.
Wow.
Burden was then making $3 million a year on horseshoes alone in 1863.
What's that nowadays with inflation, Scott?
Come on. And then when all those soldiers came home, they all went back to their farms. They all had horses. They kept buying Burden horseshoes.
Wow.
And I had no idea about any of that.
Well, what happened then? Why? Are there Burden horseshoes today?
Oh, no. The company survived till about 1935, maybe. Descendants, and then other companies buying. But by then, there were many horseshoe manufacturers. It was not the only shoe in town.
Well, so it's in your blood.
Yeah.
And you had no idea.
See, some of those Burdens married those Vanderbilts that we were talking about.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Who was richer, the Burdens or the
Vanderbilts?
Wow, that's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah.
That's on a grand scale, right, in the U.S. and how you.
Yes.
Yeah, you're sort of the history of the U.S. there.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you have some wonderful stories to share locally about the San Gabriel Valley.
We call this the SGV3. So we'd like to ask you about 3 very important places in the San Gabriel Valley to you.
Well, certainly Santa Anita. It's where I had a career. That changed my life. Harry had Parkinson's, and Harry and I always went to the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center every morning for 7 o'clock senior aerobics. Loved it. Loved that pool. Went there for years and years. And I think also the third one is the San Rafael District. I lived on Laguna Road for 40 years, just south of the San Rafael School, north of Johnson Pond. And I can remember, way before that, when I was just in a little rented house someplace, I would drive down Laguna Road and I would say, oh, I wish I could live here. Oh, this is so beautiful. It kind of reminds me of Long Island because it's kind of woodsy and the houses aren't next to other houses. And it's this kind of wonderful place. I wish I could live here. I was able, years later, to buy a house on Laguna Road.
Wow.
Very
that's
happy
great.
there.
And that's a beautiful area.
Yeah.
The Santa Anita, for our listeners that she's speaking of, is the Santa Anita Racetrack, right?
In Arcadia.
Right. And we've had several people mention the Rose Bowl, and the Aquatic Center is within the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And I think you're mentioning, is it the therapy pool? Is it the smaller pool?
We didn't go to the therapy pool. We went to the big pool in the shallow end. That was a different kind of a class.
And was that special because that was something you were doing with Harry?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And San Rafael is an area, I guess, just west of the Colorado Bridge, right?
West of the big arroyo.
Right.
It's sort of the last section of Pasadena before you get to Highland Park.
Right. Wow. Well, what's in your future now, Ada? What are you working on? What are you passionate about? What are some of those things?
Memoirs.
Oh, great. Are you actively writing?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And what can we expect?
Well, Ada procrastinating Gates.
Okay.
Anyway, I've been taking a memoir writing class for 4 years, and my teacher is Pam Hickle, and I meet with other women and men, and we're all writing little 2-page vignettes of the life, and I have 4 years of them, so they're stacked up in a box.
And one thing Russell always says is those guests on this podcast should take the podcast and keep it and show it to relatives, friends, because it has brought out part of your history as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It memorialized, part of your life.
Thank you.
You don't always get a chance to sit down like this, right, with people that you wish could hear the stories and know more about you and Harry and your life. So it was a really fascinating story, and I thank you for sharing it with us and the listeners.
Yeah.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Scott.
Yes,
My pleasure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for the listeners, thank you again for spending this time with us and with Ada, and I hope that you were as blown away with her stories and enjoyed this time, and I invite you to tune in again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Ada.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the SGV Master Key. You can find the full back catalog of the SGV Master Key at sgvmasterkey.com and wherever you get your podcasts. This show was produced and edited by Russell Mono and Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. Thanks again for listening or watching. We'll see you again real soon in the next episode.
Nice mother. No, kind mother.